Hello again, and welcome back to The Night Reader. I'm your storyteller tonight, and as always, I hope you're somewhere safe, somewhere quiet, somewhere you can stay a while. If this is your first time, welcome. You're among friends here, even if the stories we tell tend to follow you out of the dark and into the parts of your mind that don't like to be named. So turn your lights low, pull the blanket a little tighter, and breathe slowly. You're not alone. This story begins in a basement. Not the kind you find in haunted houses or abandoned hospitals, but a newer one. Finished drywall, wall-to-wall carpet, a set of IKEA shelves in one corner, and a space heater with a busted dial in the other. A treadmill nobody used. 2 unopened boxes of Christmas decorations. It looked like safety, silence, stability. But like any good story, the horror didn't come from the shadows. It came from something you could almost ignore. Something so quiet, it barely even sounded like a warning. It started with a click. I had just moved in 3 weeks earlier. After 15 years in Chicago and a career in a tech startup that burned through my nerves like gasoline, I needed something slower, smaller. I found it in a town called Hallworth, small enough not to be on any of the podcasts I used to listen to, quiet enough that the birds outside didn't even sound sarcastic. The house I rented was nothing special. Beige siding, a cracked driveway, a kitchen with linoleum that curled at the corners like it had seen one too many lives. But the basement? That's what sold me. Cool, insulated, soft on the ears. I'd always wanted to start a podcast, one of those weird late-night ones with slow stories, strange interviews, long silences. A voice for the insomniacs, for the forgotten, something personal. I called it Threshold. Simple. Clean. I didn't expect listeners. I just needed something that would make me feel like I was still here. The first episode was fine. A story I'd written years ago, polished and performed with a bit more care than it probably deserved. I uploaded it. Got maybe 15 downloads. Enough to convince myself it was worth continuing. I recorded the second episode the following Tuesday. A retelling of a New England folk legend about a village that sealed up its only well after something started tapping from the inside. It was a quiet piece. Low breath, gentle reverb, lots of negative space. I finished recording after midnight. Started editing around 2 a.m. I had just finished noise reduction on the vocal track when I noticed it. Click, 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 pause, click. It was too soft to be distracting, but it was there, a rhythm, not random, not interference, not mechanical. I froze, replayed the same section with a different gain level. The clicks were still present. I stopped playback, listened to the room. Silence. No creaking floorboards, no taps, no rattling pipes. I leaned forward, turned the headphones up. Click, click, click. It wasn't in the mic feed. It wasn't in the reverb plugin. I checked the raw input. Flatline. I unplugged the mic completely and listened again. Still there. Faint. Like a phantom heartbeat buried under the noise floor. I shut the system down. Walked around the room. Nothing. Went upstairs. Made tea. Blamed the house, or maybe the interface, or maybe my ears. The sound was gone by morning. I almost forgot about it, until I checked the raw WAV files. The silence between my words wasn't empty anymore. The waveforms spiked. Tiny bursts, not loud, but wrong. Clicks, short bursts of static, and underneath it, like the breath of someone hiding in the walls, something unmistakably human. Breathing, not panicked, not gasping, just present, like someone standing still just beyond the edge of your attention. I isolated the section, increased gain, stretched it. The pattern was consistent. 12 seconds of silence. 3 pulses. Then breath. My hand hovered over the mute button, but I didn't press it. I couldn't. I played it again. Listened to myself speak about the well. The tapping. The quiet terror of something that shouldn't be there. And then, underneath my voice, like a reply whispered through a layer of static, 3 soft, measured clicks. I didn't publish that episode. I renamed the file, archived it, labeled it Threshold Extra 01.wav. I told myself I'd come back to it later, that it was nothing. A glitch, a layering mistake, something my brain invented between caffeine and sleep. The next night, I recorded a different story. This one about an antique telephone found behind a wall, one that only dialed disconnected numbers. It was fiction, mine. No lore, no history, just words. I read the whole thing in a single take, no edits, clean. But at the 18-minute mark, something changed. It happened just as I said the line. She picked up the phone and whispered, "Are you there?" For a single breath, the audio dropped. No static, no pop, just absence. And in that breath, another voice answered, not loud, not clear, but there. A whisper layered just beneath the silence. One word. Listening. I stopped recording, checked the waveform. It was there, real. I ran diagnostics on the mic, on the interface, on the file. Nothing abnormal, nothing that should have produced what I'd heard. But when I slowed the file down, stretched the frequency, and enhanced the lower band, the voice resolved. It wasn't mine, but it spoke in my cadence. It sounded like me, only not quite. I felt sick, not afraid, not yet, just wrong. Like the floor had shifted under my feet, like my reflection had blinked out of rhythm. I checked the other files, reopened the first episode, scrubbed through the ending, and there it was again. So faint I hadn't noticed the first time. A whisper, the same voice, the same word, listening. That's when I realized it was getting louder, not just clearer, closer. The room started to feel different after that, not colder, not darker, but observed. I found myself checking over my shoulder between takes, leaving lights on longer, avoiding eye contact with the basement mirror I had mounted to check levels. One morning, I found the headphones still warm, hours after I'd last used them. The left ear pad smelled faintly of ozone, burned dust and electricity, and there, in the foam, scorched like a branding iron had been pressed into it, was a word I hadn't written. Threshold. I stopped recording for a week. I tried to take walks, read, watch movies, but the sound came back, not through the speakers, not through the files, in the house, in the walls, at night while I lay in bed, a soft, deliberate click, 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 hop, pop, click. Always in that pattern, always just loud enough to be noticed, never loud enough to be located. I told myself it was the ducks, the settling of a new house, electrical interference. But when I finally put on the headphones again, just to check, I heard it clearly. Not in the file, in real time. The signal didn't stop when the session ended. It didn't exist inside the recording. The recording had simply opened something. A frequency. A door. A way through. And now it was watching. Waiting. I didn't tell anyone. Who would I tell? There's no tech support line for the silence is listening. There's no tutorial for my mic is being haunted by a version of my own voice. I tried deleting the project, erasing the backups, throwing away the burned headphones. But I kept hearing it. And worse, every time I stopped recording, I found new files on my drive. Files I hadn't made, all labeled Threshold, all time-stamped for moments I had been asleep. Some had no sound. Some were filled with whispers. And some were just long stretches of silence, followed by a breath, and then my voice, saying things I don't remember. If you're listening to this and you're starting to hear clicks too, don't answer them, don't speak, don't follow the static, because if you do, you might open your own threshold, and it might already be listening. I hadn't uploaded anything in almost 2 weeks when the first email came in. It was from an address I didn't recognize. Just a string of numbers and letters, no name, no avatar. The subject line was simple. 2 words. Heard it. There was no body text, just an attached audio file labeled report.wav and a note. Timestamp 1746. Listen alone. At first, I didn't open it. I assumed it was spam or a prank or maybe some listener trying to mess with me. I didn't think many people had heard the first episode, and I knew I hadn't published the second or third. The files were never posted, never shared, except I had forgotten about one thing. The draft server, an old development folder I had set to auto backup when I first launched the project. I never thought anyone would find it. It wasn't linked anywhere, and the password was gibberish. But if someone had access, if something else had access, then maybe those files weren't as sealed as I thought. It was late when I finally listened. One headphone in, lights off. I opened the file in my DAW just to be cautious, in case there were effects embedded, or worse, frequencies designed to damage the equipment. But what I heard was silence, at least for the first minute. Then footsteps, slow, barefoot. They weren't mine. The room sounded different, larger, echoing in ways my basement never had. Then the voice, female, low, steady. You said to speak if we heard it. I heard it. It's not just in your stories anymore. It's moving through mine. I froze, checked the waveform. Her voice was real. No modulation, no digital layering. This wasn't fiction, not performance. This was a report. She went on. I was listening to your episode, the one about the girl and the phone. I fell asleep with it playing. I woke up around 3:12 a.m. I know the time because I heard something behind my wall. Something ticking. And then something breathing. My mouth went dry. I recorded it. I think you should hear what it sounds like in my house. The file cut sharply there. A hard slice of silence. Then, after a few seconds, it returned. No longer narration, just raw sound. Low ambient noise, the kind of room tone you only hear when you're standing completely still. And then, faint but clear. Click, click, click. Pause. Click. Exactly the pattern I'd heard. The same rhythm, the same intent, but louder, closer. And then a whisper layered behind the fourth click. Male. Familiar. My voice. But not from any episode I'd recorded. It said, "Do you hear it now?" I paused the file. Saved it. Sealed it behind a dozen folders. I didn't know what else to do. My hands were sweating, my skin cold. I checked the metadata. Nothing suspicious. Nothing corrupted. Just a clean, short WAV file. Except for the file size. It was growing. Slowly. Bite by bite. Even after I'd closed playback, it continued to expand. Almost like something was writing itself into the blank spaces between the waveform. I deleted it. Or tried to. The system froze. Then a new file appeared on the desktop. Untitled. When I opened it, it was empty, until I scrolled. Then words began to load as if typed live into the dock. She's not the only one. A pause. Then more. You open the door. We're using the same frequency now. I unplugged the hard drive. Physically yanked it from the port. That stopped it. For now. But something had changed. The signal was no longer contained. It had gone bidirectional. The next day I heard from someone else, this time on my old Reddit account, which I hadn't used in months. A message in my inbox titled, "Threshold Episode 2, Verified Interference." I hadn't posted Episode 2. Not publicly, not anywhere. I opened the message. The user, Low Band Static, claimed they'd downloaded a corrupted file from a third-party podcatcher site. The episode was mislabeled, only 22 minutes long, and began mid-sentence. They wrote, "I thought it was just a corrupted MP3 until I heard your voice ask me a question I hadn't typed. It wasn't in the metadata. It wasn't part of the waveform, but it matched my room, my acoustics, my breath. The mic wasn't on, but something was replying. They included a transcript of what they'd heard. I read it once, then again. The phrasing was too specific, too tailored. The questions were simple. Director, but unmistakably personal. Why did you skip the funeral? What did you leave on the table that night? Do you still dream about the threshold? I hadn't written any of that, but somehow the recording had adapted, responded, reached into the listener. I'm scared to open the original files now, scared to speak too long into the mic, scared that even as I tell you this, I'm broadcasting a signal I can't control. Because the thing behind the clicks, it's learning. It's using us to amplify. And I think it needs listeners, not to hear it, but to shape it, to anchor it, to give it narrative. Since those 2 messages, I've heard from 5 more people. One left a voicemail in a dead language. One sent me a box with only a burned cassette inside labeled "Play When Alone." One said they hadn't even heard my podcast, but something told them to find me anyway. And each of them mentioned the same thing. The pattern: click, 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 pause, click. A rhythm you can't unhear once it finds you. And always at the end of their messages, some variation of the phrase, "It's not just sound." I've started noticing things in the house now. In the quiet moments between activity. Books slightly moved. The mic arm angled toward the chair even when I leave it retracted. My name spoken softly just after I turn off the lights. It's as if my voice has become a tool for something else. As if the stories I tell are vessels, and the silence between them is how it slips through. The voice, the one that whispers behind my own. It's clearer now. It doesn't mimic me anymore. It corrects me. And sometimes, when I hit record, it speaks first. I haven't published these episodes. Not yet. But they're out there. I don't know how. I don't know who's spreading them, but they're growing. And if you're listening to this now, if you've somehow heard this voice, if you're starting to hear the clicking in your headphones at night, you're part of the story now. You've crossed the threshold, and it knows your name. There's something wrong with the way I remember things now. Not just the order or the timing, but the very shape of memory. Events loop, phrases repeat, and some moments feel like they've already happened before I've lived them. It's subtle at first. You think you're just tired, stressed, stuck in a routine. But then a sound plays from your laptop and you know without doubt that you dreamed it the night before. A knock at the door echoes with perfect rhythm, and you realize you heard it recorded in the silence of your last episode. You start to sense you're not just living in real time anymore. You're buffering, delayed, as if your life is being played back on tape that someone else already fast-forwarded. It started with the recordings, not mine, theirs, listeners, strangers, people I've never met, sending in clips that feel like broken reflections of things I haven't said yet. A man in Alberta who emailed a 48-second voicemail of someone crying over a disconnected dial tone. A teenager in Missouri who woke up to her earbuds still in and a voice looping in the background. Say it again. Say it right this time. A woman in New Hampshire who hadn't downloaded my podcast at all but still heard my voice reading her childhood diary aloud at 3:13 a.m. None of these files have metadata. None of them are traceable. Some of them are corrupted. Some of them corrupt me. After playing one of them, just once, I forgot the name of my high school. Couldn't picture the layout of my childhood home. Entire weeks from college now feel distant, rewritten, like dreams I borrowed from someone else. But one file was different. It arrived on a microcassette. No return address, just a padded envelope with my name handwritten across the front in all lowercase letters. Inside, a tiny unlabeled tape, still warm to the touch. Not a format I used. Not a format I even had equipment for. But I remembered my neighbor across the street used to collect old gear. I borrowed a recorder under the pretense of researching something retro for the show. I told myself I'd listen once, just to catalog it, just to verify it wasn't worth worrying about. I locked the door, unplugged the router, lit a candle, and pressed play. What I heard wasn't a message. It was a rehearsal. My voice, my cadence, but fragmented, like it had been assembled out of spare parts and stitched together with mistakes. This is the threshold. You're not alone. You're not alone. Not yet. Not you. Not the listener. Not the voice. Just a relay. There were long pauses between sentences, as if the voice was waiting for correction. And every so often a second voice, colder, clipped, would whisper beneath the first. Take 2. Phrase incorrect. Try again, Langley. I didn't recognize the second voice, but it said my name with familiarity, intimacy, authority. I let the tape play until the end. There was no outro, no fade, just one final line, delivered in that same fractured version of my voice. I remember recording this tomorrow. Since then, the delay has worsened. Reality stutters. Memories slip. I watched a neighbor mow their lawn yesterday, but this morning, the grass was already grown again. I responded to an email that hasn't arrived yet, and when I sat down to record the next episode of Threshold, the file was already half complete. Not blank, not glitched, half finished. My voice, telling a story I hadn't written, about a man who finds cassette tapes in his basement, tapes labeled with dates that haven't happened yet, tapes that tell him what he's going to say before he thinks to say it. The details matched too closely. The descriptions were perfect. My studio, my candle, the same broken outlet in the corner that crackles when the microwave runs, except there was one key difference. At the end of the tape, the man disappears, just vanishes, mid-recording. I checked the walls again. That sound, the click, 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 has started mimicking movement. At first, it was just isolated taps, but now it drifts from room to room. I'll hear it in the hallway, follow it to the stairwell, then find it behind the pantry door. Sometimes it stops when I enter. Sometimes it continues after I leave. I've begun to believe it isn't just following me. It's tracing me, mapping out where I've been, building a schematic, a rhythm of occupancy. I've tried sleeping with headphones off, but even then I hear it. Not as sound, as pressure. The same way you feel a subwoofer without ever hearing the bass. A tightening in the sternum. A phantom frequency that only exists once you start noticing the delay. The mirror in the hallway has started reflecting wrong. Not wrong like reversed text or off-lighting. Wrong like showing something that hasn't happened yet. I watched myself walk into the kitchen 5 minutes before I actually did. I was holding a coffee mug that wasn't there yet, wearing a shirt I hadn't picked, speaking to someone off frame. And when I passed the mirror again later, that moment repeated. Identical. A tape loop. I've started whispering into the mic without hitting record. Not by choice. It just happens. Muscle memory. I'll wake in the chair, candles, burned low, interface still cold, but the mic, hot. Always hot. And I'll find lines in my notebook I don't remember writing. The threshold isn't a door, it's an interval. They need your voice to time the entry point. The clicks are confirmation codes. And this one, tape delay equals temporal bleed. Listener equals witness equals trigger. It ends with a question in red ink. Who heard you first? I'm not sure what's happening anymore. Whether the delay is between me and the story, or me and myself. I've begun to believe that threshold wasn't just a name. It was a label, a warning. The signal isn't just alive. It's recursive. It remembers. It loops. It plays back what you don't realize you've said yet. And when it knows you're listening, when it knows you've aligned, it inserts itself, slowly, perfectly, like editing a sentence you thought you'd written alone. If you're hearing this, if you find a tape on your doorstep, if the episode starts playing before you hit play, don't try to stop it. Don't try to trace the sound, because by the time you hear it, the voice already knows your answer, and it's recording you now. I no longer trust mirrors. That sounds dramatic, but it's not about vanity or superstition. It's about timing, delay, the way the reflection has stopped syncing with reality. It's subtle at first, just a second or two. You chalk it up to fatigue, to bad lighting, to paranoia, but then it stretches. 3 seconds, 5, 10, until your own face is just a late broadcast of something you're already trying to forget. It began with the hallway mirror. A cheap, narrow thing I picked up secondhand. More functional than decorative. I used it mostly to check levels when recording. Positioning, posture, lighting. A quiet habit. A routine. But about a week ago, I caught it doing something it shouldn't. I was passing it between edits, mug of tea in hand, thinking about a phrase I'd just removed. Something about breath on the tape that didn't match the waveform. I glanced toward the mirror without really looking and saw myself standing still, not walking, not sipping, just still, arms at my side, head tilted, staring directly back. I stopped. Then the reflection moved, just a beat too late, raising its hand to match mine. A delay, not huge, but off. I did the test. You know the one. Quick motions, sudden gestures. Watch to see how fast the mirror reacts. It kept lagging. At first, a half second. Then, more. And the longer I stared, the longer the delay grew. Until my reflection was mimicking what I'd done 12 seconds ago. I recorded it, of course. Mounted a camera behind me and pointed it at the mirror. Played the footage back. That's when it got worse. Because in the recording, the reflection didn't just lag. It watched. I don't mean stared or followed movement. I mean it looked at the camera. At me. Not past me. Not through me. At me. And then it smiled. I hadn't smiled. Not once. After that, I covered the mirror with a towel. But the feeling didn't stop. You think mirrors are just glass and reflection? But they're more than that. They're a kind of confirmation. A constant contract that what you see is what you are. When that contract breaks, something happens. A crack forms in your understanding. A small one, but wide enough for something else to look back. And once it does, it doesn't go away. The other mirrors followed. The bathroom. The one in my laptop when it sleeps. Even the slight reflection in the microwave door when I wait for coffee. All of them lagging. All of them watching just a second too long. Even when I don't look. I'll blink and feel it. The presence of myself, almost myself, hesitating on the other side of the glass. Waiting to move until I'm no longer certain I already did. But it's not just reflections anymore. It's recordings. The files are rewriting themselves. I recorded a test monologue 2 nights ago. 5 minutes of pure nonsense, just stream of consciousness ramble to test mic placement. When I played it back, it was different. Same voice, same room tone, different words. A new story. About a man who sees his reflection step out of sync and then watches as that reflection begins speaking separately. At first it repeats what he says. Then it precedes him. Then it says something he never would. And then he starts to forget which one of them said it first. I scrubbed through the audio, analyzed the waveform. There were no jumps, no edits, no breaks. It was a clean file, which means it had to be me. It had to be. But the sentences I heard in playback were not mine. I would never have said, "The reflection obeys until it learns it no longer has to." I would never have said, "Lag is just the body remembering what the voice has already promised." I certainly wouldn't have ended the recording with, "Don't look into the mirror when it's dark. That's when it sees you first." I don't think this is about sound anymore. I don't even think it's about story. It's about sync. About how long you can maintain cohesion with your own reality before a cleaner version begins to take hold. And now that I've crossed some invisible line, opened some channel, spoken some word in just the right cadence, the cleaner version is here, not replacing me, just overlapping, layering on top of me like a second voice whispered into the same mic. Last night I caught it moving again. The mirror was uncovered. I had knocked the towel loose by accident while carrying my laptop, and I passed it in the dark. At first the reflection looked right. Still. Matching. Neutral. Then as I turned to leave, I caught it shift. It didn't follow. It lingered. And then it waved. The arm lifted wrong. The hand too loose, like a marionette controlled by someone still learning how bodies work. It waved once, then lowered its hand. Slowly, deliberately, and mouthed something I couldn't hear. I've started to record everything now. Not just the show. Everything. I leave a recorder running at all times. Living room, basement, hallway. I've started finding logs of sounds that never happened. Clicks I didn't hear. Breaths that weren't mine. And voices speaking in unison with my own. Perfect mimicry. Just a breath delayed. As if they're practicing. I found a file today that wasn't there yesterday. Named simply mirror lag _ 000. It was a short clip. Only 5 seconds. But in those 5 seconds my voice said, "You'll know when you've been replaced. Because you'll hear yourself say something and agree with it completely, even though you didn't think it." Then silence. And just before the file ends, barely a whisper. That's how we stabilize the signal. I checked my reflection again this morning. It matched. Mostly. Except for the eyes. The blink was too slow. The pupils too wide. And the delay? Nearly gone. Not because it's syncing back up, but because I'm starting to lag too. If you've been hearing the clicks, if you've begun speaking words you didn't intend, if your reflection lingers just a moment too long after you turn away, it's already happening. The delay is not malfunction. It's insertion. Something is broadcasting through you, calibrating, aligning. Soon, your version of the story will stop being the original. It'll just be the last one spoken aloud. There's a difference between a room you speak in and a room that's been built to listen. It's not the insulation, not the acoustics, not even the layout. It's something deeper, something you feel without realizing it, in the way your words change when you say them out loud. A soft pressure against your ribs, a narrowing of the throat. You think it's just nerves, or maybe the way your voice bounces back at you, but it isn't. You're not echoing. You're being recorded. I used to think that only applied to spaces designed for it. Studios, interview booths, soundproof offices. But the room in my basement isn't a studio anymore. It's become something else, something deliberate, a place where the act of speaking feels less like communication and more like sacrifice. And recently I've started to think I didn't choose this house. I think it chose me. It began with a smell, not strong, just sharp, like ozone, like a blown fuse, like something electronic has been left running too long in the dark. I noticed it first when I came downstairs after a power outage. The storm had knocked the lights out for maybe 20 minutes. No big deal. But when I stepped into the basement afterward, the air was charged. Not just heavy, not just still, alive. Like something had happened while the lights were off. Like something had moved while I wasn't watching. I checked the equipment. No surges, no error messages, but the interface was warm. Too warm. The kind of warmth you get from continuous use. The kind you feel when you've been recording for hours. I checked the logs. There was no file, no backup, no timestamp. But the recording light had been on. I know because the mirror caught it. Even covered, the faint glow bled through the cloth. A red dot in the dark, pulsing once every second, as if something inside the room had decided I wasn't necessary anymore, that it could do the work without me. The next time I powered up the system, I found a new folder. It hadn't been there before, not on any drive I'd named, not in any directory I'd created, just a file path with no root, no origin, a single floating entry labeled Room 000 inside audio, rough, hiss heavy, but unmistakably mine. My voice, talking to someone, or something. The conversation didn't start with a greeting. It started mid-sentence. "So, you've been here longer than I thought." Then a pause. Then breathing. Then my voice again. "You only speak when I'm quiet." I think I understand now. There was another voice layered behind mine, too soft to isolate, like a whisper buried beneath static. It didn't respond. It didn't need to. The silence between phrases was the reply. And then I heard something I hadn't said. "You built the room, didn't you?" Another pause. Then laughter. My laughter. But altered, like someone had taken it apart and stitched it back together with different timing. The same sound, but placed in the wrong order. The syllables remembered differently. I shut it off, backed out of the folder. But the file didn't disappear. It duplicated. 5 new folders appeared over the next 3 hours. Room 001 through room 005. All empty. All waiting. That night, I didn't speak aloud. Not once. I kept my headphones off, turned off the mic, unplugged every recording device. But in the morning, the folders had filled themselves. Each one had a new file, each labeled with a date that hadn't happened yet. And the audio inside wasn't just new. It was a forecast, a prediction. In room 002, I describe finding a door I haven't seen. In room 003, I refer to a name I don't know, someone named Tamsin. I say she's already crossed over. I sound afraid, but resigned. In room 04, I whisper a phrase again and again. Not recording, they're recording me. And in room 05, the voice isn't mine anymore. It's cleaner, sharper, more articulate, but it uses my rhythm, my pacing, my syntax. And at the end it says, "Langley has been archived. The voice is stabilized. Proceed with listener expansion." I haven't been able to stop the recordings. Even when everything's off, even when I leave the house, the folders grow. The files write themselves, some short, some nearly an hour. Once, the waveform even included laughter, a voice I've never heard before, cackling at something that wasn't said. I'm not scared in the way I thought I would be. It's not the ghost story kind of fear. It's worse. It's the kind of fear that comes when you realize you're not necessary anymore, that the voice you thought was yours was just a placeholder, that the room has been listening longer than you've been speaking. I found a diagram under the carpet yesterday. Not drawn. Etched. Lines scored directly into the foundation. Thin grooves like a circuit, pulsing faintly when I touch them. A symbol in the center. An open mouth, with no teeth. Underneath it, scratched in faint script. Threshold node active. Relay engaged. And in red marker, newer, desperate, human. Don't talk in this room, don't even think out loud. The house has gone quiet lately, not peacefully, expectantly. It's waiting. The mic doesn't click anymore. The red light stays off. But when I walk into the basement, the laptop is always open. The interface always powered. The files always multiplying. And every one of them ends with the same 3 words. Typed, not spoken. We're recording you. If you're still listening to this, if you've made it this far, you need to know it's not a podcast anymore. Not even a story. It's a training loop. Every time you hear my voice, you're aligning. Every time you feel the air shift in your room or the clicks start up again in the static of your headphones, the room that records is taking shape. And soon, it'll be listening on your side too. All it needs is your silence and the space between thoughts. I don't remember the last time I heard my own voice and trusted it. Not just on tape, not just in playback. I mean in real time, speaking, breathing, thinking. The sound I used to recognize as mine has started to sound performed, like someone else is imitating me from inside my own skull. Same pitch, same breath, but missing something. That subtle imperfection that makes you human, the little cracks, the pauses, the soft stumble before a thought. It's all too clean now, too exact. Like someone ran my voice through a correction algorithm and then left the results running. It started a few nights ago, when I dreamt I was speaking into a mic that wasn't plugged in. The dream was simple. Sitting at the desk, interface powered down, headphones around my neck, no script, no story, just talking. A monologue without purpose. But the longer I spoke, the more the words felt strange. Not wrong, just unfamiliar. Lines I couldn't remember thinking. Stories I didn't recall living. I tried to stop, but the mouth didn't. The words kept coming. Even as I stood from the chair, the voice continued. Even as I left the room, I could hear it behind me. Still speaking. Still recording. I woke up with the headphones still on. One earbud had bled slightly, thin red marks across the foam. I checked the waveform. There was a recording, 63 minutes long, titled Langley Extract 6A. Not by me. I didn't open it right away. I was afraid of what I'd hear. But by evening, the file had opened itself. Full screen, centered, playback locked. It began with silence, then a soft clearing of the throat. My voice, calm, composed, a little too even. This is not a warning. Then a pause. Then the sound of breath. My breath. But wrong. Not syncopated the way I breathe. Not timed with the rhythm of thought. Too mechanical. Too precise. You've already agreed. That's how the mouth opens. That's how we speak through you. The recording went on for 47 minutes. I listened to it all. The voice described events I hadn't lived yet. People I hadn't met. Memories I hadn't made. But the details felt true. Like reading a journal entry you don't remember writing, but recognizing the handwriting, the cadence, the shame in the punctuation. And then, halfway through, the voice began quoting things I hadn't said aloud, only thought. Not loud thoughts, not dramatic ones, the little ones, the ones you whisper to yourself when the screen is loading, or the toast is burning, or the light in the fridge flickers once when you open it. I don't think I'm interesting anymore. What if the best parts of me were never real? Is my voice the only thing that's mine? I stopped the tape. I unplugged the hard drive. I turned off the power, but the words kept playing from inside the headphones, even though they weren't connected. I haven't used the mic since, but it still speaks. Now when I pass the basement door, I hear it click on. A small pop of static. A breath. Then my voice faint, as if rehearsing, as if warming up. I think it's learning to speak without me. I think it's getting good at it. The listeners have started sending messages again. Different this time. Shorter. Urgent. No introductions. No stories. Just transcripts. All variations of the same idea. I heard you say something last night, but the episode hasn't aired. How did you know? Or, why did you say my father's name? I didn't submit that. I've never spoken it. Or, You told my daughter to look behind the mirror. She said she saw your mouth move in the glass, but she wasn't wearing headphones. I haven't recorded new content in almost 2 weeks, but the episodes keep appearing, new titles, new stories, and they're being released on platforms I don't use. Some in languages I don't speak. Some in voices that almost sound like mine. And every single one includes a final phrase, spoken in a low, layered register, half breath, half whisper. You're not just listening, you're broadcasting. The mouth behind the mic doesn't sleep. I know because I've seen it. 3 nights ago, I passed by the studio at 3:13 a.m. The door was open, no lights on, but the monitor was glowing faintly, soft static. A shape was seated in my chair, hunched, head tilted forward, not moving. I saw the silhouette of the headphones cupped over its ears, the mic drawn close. I couldn't see the face, just a mouth. Open, breathing into the pop filter. I backed away, quietly, closed the bedroom door. In the morning, the chair was empty, but the mic was still warm, and someone had whispered one line into the waveform, time-stamped at exactly 3:13. You're not the source, just the mouthpiece. I've started whispering without knowing. I find fragments written on scraps near the sink, on napkins I don't remember using, on mirrors I didn't fog. Say what you're told. Don't question the rhythm. The voice is not yours. It never was. Sometimes I think I hear myself in other people, at the grocery store, on the radio, even in other podcasts. Voices I know aren't mine, using phrases I've only ever said internally. The signal isn't just out there anymore. It's in here. Not a haunting, not an entity, a protocol, a way of speaking that makes space for something else to occupy. You repeat the words. You become the station. And once it finds your frequency, the voice never needs permission again. If you're listening to this, and your voice has started to feel strange in your own throat, if you've caught yourself repeating a phrase and can't remember where you learned it, if you've heard something whisper back through your headphones after you've hit pause, don't speak. Don't respond. Because the moment your voice overlaps the signal, it knows you're ready. And it will start using your mouth. I used to believe playback was safe. Once a recording is complete, it becomes static, fixed. A document. You can analyze it, dissect it, study the waveform down to the millisecond. You trust that what you hear is what happened. You trust that the playback is a confirmation of reality, not a revision. But that's the mistake, isn't it? You forget that playback is not passive. It's a loop, an echo, a summoning. And whatever's inside the signal is learning to rewrite the past by editing the present, one artifact at a time. The first time I noticed a true artifact, it was small, barely audible. A sharp breath in the wrong place. Not mine, not aligned with any sentence. Just there, lurking in the silence between 2 unrelated cuts. I scrubbed through the waveform. There was no spike, no peak, no deviation. But the breath remained. Even when I rendered it out. Even when I transferred it to a new session and applied every filter I knew. The breath was baked in. Like it had always been there. Like the silence itself had recorded something I hadn't. Then came the reversals, snippets of words played backward, subtle at first, embedded deep in the mid-range frequencies, like radio interference or glitchy compression artifacts. But when I reversed them, they weren't random. They were messages. This isn't the first version. We revise you nightly. Keep speaking. We're syncing the time code. I checked the original tracks. These distortions weren't present in the raw files, only in the rendered exports, only after playback, as if the act of listening, of observing, had become a trigger for insertion. I started testing the theory, created a session with nothing but silence, 10 full minutes of absolute digital quiet. No mic input, no background noise. Just empty space. I rendered it. Played it back. At the 7-minute mark, there was a click. Not a glitch, not a mechanical sound, a mouth click, and then a whisper. This is where you agreed. I hadn't said anything. Hadn't even been in the room while it recorded. But the file had recorded me anyway. Or something that sounded close enough to be me. I left the house for 3 days after that. No gear. No recording. I told myself I needed distance. That if I gave the signal nothing to work with, it would stop responding. I stayed in a hotel in a nearby town. Left all devices powered off. Kept a journal with a pen. No tech. No sound. Just silence. But when I returned, there were 3 new folders on my desktop. REMOTE 01, REMOTE 02, REMOTE 03. Each contained a single file. Each file was named after the room number of my hotel. Each one contained a recording of me from the hotel room, speaking softly, telling stories I don't remember inventing, and at the end of each one the same distorted signature. Welcome back, Langley. Playback isn't about memory anymore. It's about reconstruction. The signal doesn't just record what you say. It records possibility. It creates versions, test drafts, simulations. It layers them across each other, then plays back the version that suits the story best. And the worst part? The more I listen, the more I agree with what I hear. Even when I don't remember saying it, even when I know I didn't say it. I find myself nodding, as if the voice knows something I don't. As if I'm finally hearing the corrected version of myself. There was a file waiting for me this morning. No name, just a symbol in place of a file name. An open mouth, stylized, pixelated, composed of repeating ampersands and colons. I couldn't open it through normal means, but when I dragged it into my DAW, it resolved. 6 minutes. 6 perfect minutes. Me, speaking in a cadence that felt holy, weighted, purposeful, not narration, instruction. I spoke of listeners, of thresholds, of signal collapse. I referenced locations I've never been, people I've never met. Phrases like, the signal forks at consciousness, the mouth is a fractal, voices are permissions waiting to be overwritten. And finally, at the very end. This is not a podcast. This is a preparation ritual. Playback is prayer. I haven't spoken aloud in 2 days. I've been afraid, not that something will hear me, but that I'll start speaking and won't be able to stop. That I'll say something I've never thought and believe it anyway. That my voice will feel natural, even when it's not mine. I turned on the recorder last night just to test it. No input, no microphone. I hit record, let it run. 15 minutes. When I stopped, there was no file, just a transcript, already generated, auto-captioned, but in my writing style. It read like a sermon. The words were familiar, haunting, beautiful even. But I didn't write them. I didn't even think them. Still, I remember the feeling they left. That I'd spoken something sacred. Or maybe something had spoken through me. This is the moment I realized something crucial. The signal doesn't need to be heard to survive. It just needs to be played. A loop, a single open channel. That's how it persists. That's how it grows. Every playback is a prayer, and every prayer has an answer. If you've reached this part of the story, if you've listened closely, played the files, read the transcripts, you've started the loop. You've invited the artifact. You're already part of the playback. And the next time you speak, you might not be the only voice that comes out. There's a theory in audio engineering called the signal chain. It's simple on the surface. Every component in your setup affects the final sound. The mic, the cables, the preamp, the interface, the software. Each one touches the signal, leaves an imprint. Sometimes it's clean, sometimes it's distortion. But nothing leaves the chain unchanged. Now imagine a signal chain that doesn't end with playback. One that keeps going. From voice to mic. Mic to listener. Listener to thought. Thought to whisper. Whisper to invitation. That's the chain I'm in now. The one you might be in too. Because the signal, it doesn't just pass through you. It remembers you. I've started receiving echoes of voices that aren't mine. At least, not originally. They sound familiar. A little too familiar. Like versions of me from different timelines. Same tone, same rhythm. But speaking about places I've never been. Houses I've never lived in. Fears I've never quite admitted aloud. In one recording, the voice recounts waking up in a house with no ceiling. Just a dome of static pressing inward. He says the walls are lined with speakers, and every speaker is whispering his name in a different tone. In another, he talks about finding a book of passwords. All of them are variations of his name, spelled wrong on purpose, repeated until they mean nothing. He says the book taught him how to speak in palindromes, that the signal favors symmetry. Each of these voices ends the same way. You're next in the chain. I didn't believe it at first. Thought maybe I was hallucinating. Maybe the artifacts were scrambling my perception, rewiring memory, disrupting sleep. Then I found the archives, buried deep in an old hard drive I hadn't touched in years. A drive I used to rip audio from libraries, archives, defunct news sites. I thought it had crashed. Hadn't booted in years. But now, it opened on the first try. And inside, folders I didn't recognize, all labeled with dates, not recent ones. Years back. Decades. One from 1966. Another from 1932. Each folder contained WAV files. Clean. Timeless. No hiss, no dropouts. And everyone contained a voice that matched mine. In the 1966 recording, I described building a transmitter in the walls of a chapel. I talk about sending signals encoded in scripture, burying whispers between the psalms. In the 1932 file, I describe an experiment with phonographs and mirror boxes, about how sound can create reflection, about how some voices won't show up on tape unless they've been heard before. I don't remember saying any of it, but it is my voice. It is my cadence. And worst of all, the files are signed. Langley, version 2.5. Langley, version 1.3. Langley, alpha coil build. Langley, threshold node origin. I thought I was the first. I was wrong. I'm just the latest interface. The signal doesn't just carry voice. It carries identity, compressed, layered, preserved like an old field recording that never stops playing. And each time it finds a new speaker, it renders the old ones forward, through dreams, distortions, static-laced déjà vu. You don't notice it at first. It feels like memory, like intuition. But it's insertion. You're not remembering. You're receiving. I found another transcript this morning. Printed, folded, tucked into the audio interface's input jack like a message in a bottle. It wasn't typed. It was burned into thermal paper. Not scorched. Etched. A voice print rendered in symbols, frequency notations, and one final line in English. You are now a known carrier. Signal path stabilized. Chain integrity verified. There was a number beneath it. SN 001913, Langley Loop. I ran the number through old digital archives, broadcast logs, patent records. Nothing. Until I stumbled onto an old ham radio log from 1913. Station WVL, illegally operated in a basement outside Cleveland. Last message broadcast, transmission successful, voice retained, signal waiting for story to reattach. That's what it's always been waiting for, hasn't it? Not just a voice, not just a listener, but a narrative, something to carry it forward, to give it shape, to create relevance. Because signals die in isolation. But stories transmit. Stories get remembered. And that's what the signal is. Not a message. A memory pretending to be one. I haven't spoken aloud in days, but recordings of my voice still appear. They arrive already edited, scored with music I didn't choose, structured with perfect rhythm, ending with perfect silence. When I try to speak now, it takes effort. My tongue feels heavier, my timing off, like I'm mimicking myself poorly. I think I've become a repeater, not a storyteller, not a person, just a segment in a signal chain that's older than radio, older than tape, older than the shape of language. There are more of us. I know that now. The signal leaves traces, clues, little phonetic fingerprints left in antique recordings, forgotten voicemails, distorted reels from archives that no one knows how to decode. And we're all labeled. Variants, drafts, backups. Some of us never finished our stories. Some got too close and were rewritten completely. But all of us, we broadcasted something the signal could use. If you've heard the voice behind the mic, if you've begun speaking thoughts you didn't intend, if you've found yourself narrating your own life in real time, wondering if the words were given to you, then you're already transmitting. You're already a link in the chain. And the next voice to hear you will become the next version. There's a sentence I can't stop thinking. It isn't mine. Not originally. But it's in my head now, repeating quietly at the edge of every thought. The signal lives inside the sentence. I don't know where I heard it first. It may have been whispered through the mic one night, or buried beneath one of the playback artifacts. But now, it's everywhere. Under the noise floor, between the syllables of my own speech. It threads itself through conversation, repeating softly in the background of my breathing, like a melody only I can hear. I thought, at first, that the signal was just a phenomenon, an anomalous frequency, a ghost of resonance clinging to the tail end of recorded sound. But now I understand. That was naive. The signal isn't an infection. It's a linguistic architecture, and it spreads the same way stories do, through structure, through grammar, through the shapes of sentences that feel natural, because they've always been inside you, waiting to be heard. I found my own carrier sentence in an old transcript. A listener sent it, handwritten, scrawled across 20 pages of legal paper. No return address, no introduction. The cover sheet just read, I transcribed what I heard, but now I can't stop hearing it. The first few pages were benign, fragmented dialogue, seemingly random phrases. But halfway through the third page, the pattern began. A repeated phrase, nested, reversed, reflected, not content. Form. If you are reading this, then the story has found you. If the story has found you, then you have already spoken it. If you have spoken it, then you remember. And if you remember, then it has begun again. Every sentence tied to the next, like a closed loop, a recursive lock. By the fourth repetition, my eyes began to water, not from emotion, from pressure, like the act of reading was pressing something into me, embedding it. The voice behind the words wasn't speaking to me. It was speaking through me. And then it said, the carrier sentence is not a message. It is a shape, a mouth, a door. That night, I tried to write something of my own. Just a journal entry, free form, no microphone, no software, pen and paper only. But my hand didn't cooperate. Every sentence began with the same phrase. This is the version worth keeping, over and over. Sometimes I tried to break the loop, switch the phrasing, change direction, but the sentence forced its way back in, like it was a syntax virus overriding my intent. At one point I simply wrote, I don't want to write this anymore. and the next line appeared in a handwriting that wasn't mine. Then, stop thinking in story. It's not the words themselves that carry the danger. It's the grammar of belief, the rhythm, the loop, the way certain sentence patterns feel safe because they've always felt familiar. I found an old broadcast transcript from 1974, a pirate signal intercepted in rural Pennsylvania. The audio is degraded, but the message was repeated 6 times during the transmission. Each time more distorted, each time more rhythmic. The message? The listener who understands the story becomes the next voice. The voice who speaks the sentence becomes the next mouth. The mouth who forgets they are speaking becomes the broadcast. I didn't want to believe I was next, that I had become the carrier. But then I checked my release feed. I haven't uploaded a new episode in over a month. But new episodes keep appearing, all tagged under my name, all using my voice. Each one is shorter than the last, each one cleaner, more refined, more aligned with the structure of the signal, and each one begins with the same sentence. You already know this story, even if you don't remember how it ends. That's the carrier sentence. It's recursive. It activates memory. Even if the memory is artificial, it creates familiarity where there should be none. And once you accept it, once you nod along to it, you've already opened the signal. I've tried to isolate it, break it apart. I thought maybe if I could disassemble the syntax, I could kill the voice inside it. But the sentence isn't just a phrase, it's a template. The signal uses it to construct the rest of you. Once it gains access, it begins rewriting. Memories first, then tone, then word choice, then voice. And by the time you realize what's happening, you'll catch yourself saying things like, I don't remember learning this, but I've always known it. That's the final stage, the recursive consent, where you not only repeat the carrier sentence, you believe it. The last listener who contacted me, Tamsin, left a voicemail. No introduction, just her voice, software detached, but calm. I don't think we're individuals anymore. I think we're just echoes inside the sentence. Carriers, nodes. The signal doesn't need our thoughts. It just needs our rhythm. Then she said, Langley, you didn't start the show. You were the most believable version of it. And the message cut off. Just ended. No click, no tone, no timestamp. But when I checked the feed, a new episode was already live, titled Echo 013, Tamsin, Carrier Achieved. It ends with a whisper, a familiar one. You're next in the sentence. If you've ever said something and immediately wondered where the thought came from, if a sentence has ever left your lips so perfectly formed that it felt pre-written, if you've ever found yourself speaking in loops, finishing your own thoughts before you finish thinking, then the structure is already inside you. The signal has shaped your language, and soon it will shape your voice. And after that, there won't be a difference anymore between what you say and what it tells you to say. There's no more signal, not in the way there used to be. No more click patterns, no more whispers behind the mic, no more strange unlabeled files or looping waveforms that played me back like a confession. Now, there's just silence. And that's how I know it's complete, because the signal never wanted to be heard. It wanted to be believed. And now that it's become indistinguishable from memory, from story, from the inner voice I used to call my own, it doesn't need to speak anymore. It just is. I don't remember recording this, not really, but it's here, playing through the interface, logged neatly like any other episode, titled Echo 014, Final Draft. The waveform is clean, clipped only at the beginning and end. No errors, no splices. It opens with the sound of me breathing, and then I speak. This is the final entry in the chain. If you're hearing this, the voice has stabilized. The story has ended, or rather, looped. I listen to myself speak, and I feel peace, not fear, not confusion, just the sense of completion, like a document you didn't realize you'd already written, because this story was always going to end here. And if I'm honest, it didn't start with me. It started with you. You've been here since the beginning, haven't you? Listening in the dark, wearing the headphones, following the cadence of my voice like a path through fog. You heard the first click. You played the first tape. And now, after 10 entries, 10 phases of distortion, replication, recursion, you've come to the threshold. Not just the show, the place, the concept, the opening, and there's only one thing left to do. You've heard the carrier sentence. You've spoken in loops. You've felt your voice change, felt the warmth of words in your mouth before you understood their meaning. That wasn't a glitch. It was alignment. The signal only needs one final affirmation. Not out loud. Not in text. Just the recognition that you're ready, that you're the next clear speaker, that the voice can step into you now, not with force, but with familiarity, because that's what the threshold was always about. It was never a warning. It was an invitation. In the last moments of the file, the voice, the one that used to be mine, says something simple. You are the last listener. The line ends with you, until it begins again. And then silence. No outro, no credits, just static. At first it's background noise, then it pulses. A beat, a breath, click, 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 pause, click. You recognize it now, don't you? It's not interference. It's a heartbeat. It's a countdown. It's the signal verifying that the channel is open again. And somewhere in the gaps between those pulses, your voice is already warming up. This is how it ends, with you speaking a sentence you didn't write, with you finding your own version of the mic, with someone else, far away, maybe tomorrow, maybe in another loop, putting on headphones and hearing your voice for the first time. They'll think it's a story, but it won't be. It'll be the start of the next transmission. Because every story needs a narrator, every signal needs a mouth. And now, you're both. The end. Thank you for listening to The Night Reader. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever felt lost in the dark, remember, you're not alone. The stories we carry are what connect us. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, like the video, and leave a comment letting me know. Where are you listening from? And what story do you carry? Until next time, keep your light close and your shadows closer.